Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your Financial Dreams Made Possible webinar that is hosted today by SolutionsPlus in conjunction with Sagicor Life. I am your host, Dr. Charmaine Saunders today. Financial planning and management are two key components used in reducing financial risk and uncertainty.
Whenever you guys are ready, you can start the meeting.
This webinar is designed to educate, provide strategies, and motivate you to take action towards creating a financial future for you and your loved ones. The format of today's proceedings is that after each panelist, we will break for exactly 5 minutes for questions. Please type your question in the chat column on the right-hand side of your screen. If your question is not answered right away, we will try to answer at the end of the presentations, or you can send those via email. So leave us your name and email address. We are pleased to have on our panel today, Honorable Darrell Bradley, Mrs. Chandra Nisbet Cancino, Dr. Christopher Malcolm, and Ms. Tessa Usher. Before we get into our full program, please welcome Ms. Tessa Usher, founder of SolutionsPlus, to deliver the welcome remarks. Ms. Usher?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar on financial planning. It is indeed a privilege to host our first ever financial planning webinar. The aim of this webinar is to educate you, to motivate you, to empower you to take action and control of your finances. In a time such as this, we must be intentional in taking action, prudent with our finances, and strategic about how we chart the way forward. It is for this reason that SolutionsPlus has decided to take a lead role in providing the necessary information through expert advice. Life is just too precious to leave it up to chance. Together, let's plan for the future for the sake of our loved ones. Thank you. With that said, I will now pass you over to our moderator, Dr. Charmaine Saunders.
Thank you, Tessa, for your warm welcome. The Honorable Darrell Bradley is an attorney and partner at Bradley, Ellis and Company, and an adjunct faculty at the University of the West Indies and the University of Belize, Galen University, and Western Junior College. Mr. Bradley is President of the Senate and Chairman of the Social Security Appeals Tribunal. He served 2 terms as a mayor of Belize City and 3 terms as President of the Belize Mayors Association. He was Vice President of the London-based Commonwealth Local Government Forum, Vice President of the Belize Bar Association, and member of the Board of Directors of the Central Bank of Belize. Darrell holds degrees in sociology, international studies and law, and a master's degree in public administration. He also earned a postgraduate certificate in university teaching and a certificate of legal education. Darrell is married to Julianne Ellis Bradley, who is also a practicing attorney, and they have 2 children, Nathan and Sunisa. This morning, to present on estate planning, please welcome the Honorable Darrell Bradley.
He needs to unmute.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning to share with you on the all-important topic of estate planning. I want to first start off very quickly by putting a scenario to individuals. Imagine you have a man and a woman at the age of 39 years old. That man or woman has 2 children, 10 and age 7. Sadly, that man or woman is facing terminal cancer. And the anxieties or worries of that person likely has nothing to do with their sickness. The anxieties likely facing that person has to do with who will provide for their children, how will their estate be divided up, who will make decisions when they come to their end of life. And this is where we're talking about the all-important issue of estate planning. And estate planning, really the fundamental concept here is the issue of control. And control eliminates a lot of worry and a lot of anxiety. It saves expense and it avoids a lot of conflict. So fundamentally, when we're talking about estate planning, we're really talking about the legal process in which a person arranges their estate to secure their assets and provide for their beneficiaries in circumstances where they may not be able to act for themselves. And basically, we're talking about putting in place certain documents that set out what a person's intention is. In my experience as an attorney, I find a lot of conflicts occur because people are not clear in relation to their estate planning. They're not clear to set out instructions, directions as to what they want to be done at the appropriate moment. So the documents that I want to focus on this morning in this brief presentation is looking at a will, looking at a trust, and looking at a power of attorney. These are very simple, easy documents that do not really require significant legal assistance to prepare, but these can assure a person that at the appropriate time, their intentions will be carried into fruition. The first document that we want to really talk about is a will. And surprisingly, my experience is that people think that they will live forever. And they think that they do not have to plan for the eventuality of their death. This is something I find a lot with younger people. So you would be surprised that when you die without a will, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding your assets. And you would be surprised to find out that if you have no beneficiaries, and if you have no clear intentions, your assets actually go back to the government. Imagine that you would spend all your life working hard to build a house to provide for your financial future. And at the end of the day, your money goes back to the government. Without a will, you lose that level of control. I also find that a significant amount of unfairness occurs when there is not a will, when somebody doesn't set out what their intentions are. So I've had situations like this where somebody may be separated from their legal spouse and they live with somebody for a period of 20 years. When you die, if you don't have a will, that person that you live with for 20 years cannot benefit from your estate because the law really sets up very artificial rules that don't reflect people's living circumstances. A lot of times, likewise, people will take in children, they will want to provide for other persons. And if you don't have a will, the law does not really make allowances for that. So what is a will? A will is a very simple document, usually only 1 or 2 pages, that sets out your intentions, how you want your funeral expenses to be paid, how you want your debts to be paid, and who you want your property to be given to at the time of your death. Importantly, a will is governed by the Wills Act and it has to be executed in a certain formality. So you have to have 2 witnesses present and they must see you sign your will and they must be present at the same time. And none of these witnesses must be able to benefit from your estate. And fundamentally, your will will name an executor, and that person will be somebody who will be in charge of carrying into force the terms of your will. The second document that I really want to talk about is a trust. And basically what a trust is, it's a document that can operate either when you're deceased or when you're alive. And the idea of a trust is that you are putting your assets, all of your assets or some of the trust assets, in the name of a trustee to handle or deal with your property, either for yourself as the beneficiary or for your children. And a trust is created by a person who's called a settlor, and it appoints a trustee and it names these beneficiaries. So if you have young children and you want to make sure that you would provide for those young children in circumstances of your death, you may want to appoint a trustee to deal with your assets to ensure that there are annuities and certain things that are provided for, educational expenses, so that when they reach the age of majority, they're provided for. And at that time, then they can take over. The last document that I want to talk about is a power of attorney. And the power of attorney, again, can operate when somebody is alive primarily. And usually this can function very effectively in circumstances where you are not able to act for yourself. So if an individual goes abroad and an individual wants somebody to manage their rental property in Belize, or if an individual knows that they are sick and they want somebody to be able to make medical decisions for them. In other circumstances, you would have a living will and you want to be somebody to ensure that you are not kept alive by mechanical means beyond your ability to survive independently. So those are very critical decisions, and a power of attorney is a very useful tool, very simple again, and you can leave instructions to this person that you would call your attorney. It doesn't have to be a legal attorney, but this person will be given clear authority to deal with all of your assets and to make decisions, including medical decisions in circumstances where you are unable to make those decisions for yourself. The idea in relation to this is that you want to have control. You want to be able to control circumstances which are essentially beyond your control. What will happen beyond my death? What will happen if I am ill terminally and I am unconscious or unable to act for myself? And putting in place these simple documents can ensure that you avoid uncertainty, you avoid needless worry, you have the level of control and direction that will give you that ease towards your latter years. One of the things I also want to mention is that it's important in certain contexts for you to seek advice in relation to these things. I don't necessarily believe that you need an attorney for all of these things, but you should have some degree of advice. There's a lot of support online, and there's a lot of support through legal aid and attorney offices that can give people directions in relation to how to create a will, how to draft a trust, or how to create a power of attorney in circumstances where you think you may need it. And these are not for people who are older. You'd be surprised how life, even in this COVID epidemic, deals blows to us that really has us thinking about preparatory steps that we should put in place to protect those around us that we love and to provide for them in circumstances where we would not be there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Your presentation was informative and left us with a lot of food for thought. At this time, we will look at the chat and see if we have any questions, and we will have Honorable Darrell Bradley respond to those questions. So let's go to the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions in there. And let me just check if we have any questions from online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions at this time. So there's none on YouTube. Okay, there's a question. Mr. Bradley, there's a question in here. How can someone register a will?
Okay, that's a perfect question. It used to be under the Wills Act that you had a wills registry. So a person could have registered or lodged their will at the Supreme Court registry. One of the things that I've seen in my practice is somebody may draft a will, but they die 20 years into the future. How do you keep that document secure? But the Supreme Court registry has discontinued that practice of registering your will. So usually what persons do is that you would create multiple copies of your wills, so that if you do a will, you would create a copy for your executor to have, one for you, and some people give a copy for one of their beneficiaries to have, and you may also leave a copy with your lawyer. So my advice, because you can no longer register a will, is just to make appropriate numbers of copies and leave those copies with the appropriate person, particularly your executor and your attorney if it's made through an attorney. And whenever you die, any of those copies of the will can be brought forward and taken through probate.
Okay, next question. Can you please briefly give us the difference between the will and the trust again?
Well, a will is a document that takes effect when a person dies. So a will is usually a very simple document, and most people may not have a tremendous amount of assets. Usually you'd have a house and you'd have bank accounts. And so a will takes effect when you die. A trust now is a wider document, and the trust can have effect when you are alive. So I can have a living trust, and the trust has certain tax advantages. I can create a trust which place my assets while I'm alive in the hands of a trustee, and that person pays me an annuity every month or every quarter. So the idea with the trust is that it may provide a wider range of benefits. If you have a significant amount of assets, it could provide for different types of beneficiaries. For example, you may want an education trust to provide for your children, and it would be operative in circumstances when you are still alive, when in fact a will only takes effect when you're dead.
Okay, next question, and this has two parts. Can I make a will myself, and can I change my will if I change my mind?
Yes, you can. So these are actually very good questions, which I was going to cover in the presentation, but for time. But a will can be changed any day. So for example, I've had clients who change their will probably every year, and your life changes. So you may make a will, but you get married again, you have additional children, you have your circumstances change, you want to provide for different people. So at any given time, you can make a new will, and a new will that deals with the exact provisions of the previous will revokes the previous will. So usually if you make a will, there's a clause in there that says that this will is my last will and testament, and it revokes all previous wills, so that you can change your mind at any given moment, and there's no problem with that. I can't remember the second part of the question.
You answered it. She said, can I make my own will? And can I change my will if I change my mind?
You don't really need a lawyer to do it. The only important thing is that you need to have two witnesses, and those two witnesses must be together when you are signing the will, and they must see you sign. The idea with that is that when you do a will, there's a presumption of due execution as long as you have those two witnesses in place. And if any of those witnesses leave, or if any of those witnesses are named in the will as a beneficiary, their gifts fail. So the formalities are very, very critical, but there's no reason why a person can't do it themselves.
What happens if no will exists after death? Say, for example, a common law union for over 45 years.
Okay, great question. So in Belize, we have what is called the Administration of Estates Act. And I think it's section 55 has what is called the table of distribution. So if you die without leaving a will, there's a piece of legislation that divides your assets after you die. And I mentioned this earlier in the presentation that if you have no beneficiaries alive, then your assets go to the government of Belize. So the idea is draft a will because you want to really protect. And a lot of times people want to give gifts for people who are not named in that table of distribution. That deals with your children, your spouse, your parents, brothers and sisters, and then ultimately the government of Belize. So you may want to give to a friend, you may want to give to a caregiver, you may want to give to somebody else. So the idea here is have that level of control and do a will, even if you are young. You'd be surprised when it becomes very, very useful.
And this question segues right into that too. The person is asking, if I die in a sudden accident without having time to make a will the government take over my immediate family can claim?
So if you have beneficiaries, and usually you have this concept in law called the estate. So if I die, my next of kin, who is my successor, by right, they have to apply to the court, but by right is my spouse. And after my spouse, it's my children. If I have no spouse or children, then it's my parent. If I have no parent, spouse, or child, then it's my brothers and sisters of the whole blood, and then brothers and sisters of the half blood. So the law actually sets out a table of distribution. Another quick point that I want to plug in here is this idea of the common law. And I've had a lot of issues with this, including through people who claim for Social Security. People don't really appreciate the legal effect of a common law. And a common law is a single man and a single woman who live together as husband and wife. So a lot of times, because a divorce is expensive, we don't get a divorce. And we may separate from our wife or our husband, and we live with somebody else for a long period of time. The question was 45 years. You can live with somebody for 45 years, but if you're married to somebody else, or if that person is married to somebody else, you cannot claim as a common law. The law will treat that person that you were married to over 45 years ago as your legal spouse. And you'd be surprised when somebody dies, the wife or the husband, who you may not have seen for 15, 20 years, they walk into the house, they take the body, they make medical decisions, they bury the person, and they benefit from the estate because that's your legal wife. You didn't have a will.
The next question is, if you don't have children and no immediate family, how do I leave my assets to an organization?
Through a will. So a lot of times in the United States, what happens is that people tend to be very philanthropic. And so you have a lot of people who would set up wills or trusts, and they will give a significant part of their holdings to either caregivers, to friends, or to charitable organizations. Like one of the organizations that I would encourage people to give to is the University of the West Indies. So a lot of times people may want to give to their alumni, they want to give to their school. You can only do that through a will. The law, the administration of the Estates Act does not provide for that. So if you have special intentions, the only way to do that is through a will.
Okay, if a will is not registered and the person dies, will it still be valid if the will was signed?
Yes, so a will does not by law need to be registered. The idea with registration preserves the will. And I've seen situations where I've dealt with wills from the 1980s, 30 years ago. And so the risk that a will may survive a hurricane or a flood or a lot of different, you move and so forth. So there's a risk that the will may be lost, but there's no legal requirement for a will to be registered. So usually what you would do is that you would make multiple copies of the will and you would leave it with responsible people, including your attorney, so that when you die, the will comes forward. So there's no reason or need for it to be registered. You just want to make sure that it's properly stored. So somebody knows where that will is and somebody can bring that will forward when you die.
And it says, good morning. I am a single parent with one child, age 23, and a mom who gets my assets. In the case, if I have no will, I suspect it's the child who is a mom.
Yeah, so if you die, your child will get your assets automatically if you don't have a spouse. If you have a spouse or children, it's divided 1/3 to the spouse, 2/3 to the children. But importantly though, if you die and you leave minor children, in Belize, minor children cannot hold property in their own right. So that at the current moment, I have children who are age 7 and age 4. If something were to happen to me and to my wife, my children cannot take advantage of my assets. The assets have to be held in the name of a trustee until they're age 18. So the idea here is that if you do have minor children, you want to take the additional step of providing somebody that you trust who can manage your property up until the time when your children reach the age of majority, 18 years old, when they can take over. Otherwise, you may have people who take over and they will take the property for themselves and your children get nothing.
Last question, can the witness be a family member or someone neutral?
So your witnesses should be close to you, because when you do, you have to go through a process called probate. And as part of that process, you have to have an affidavit of an attesting witness. One of the people who sign your will has to come forward and say that they signed your will. So you wanna appoint somebody who's close to you that you would know. And you can have family members, you can have people who are co-workers, you can have friends. But the important rule is that the witness to your will cannot be somebody who is benefiting under the will. So if I have somebody who is getting a gift under the will, that person cannot be a witness. The idea there is that that person will have an interest. So that the witnesses have to be somebody who you know, who are reasonably close to you, but somebody who is independent, somebody who is not named as a beneficiary in the will.
Okay, it says, is there a specific format for the will?
No, the only format though is that there needs to be execution properly done, so that at the end of the will, the testator or the testatrix, the person who's making the will sign, and the two witnesses likewise will sign. And those three people need to be present together at the same time. So I've seen wills which are made of paper writing. I've seen people who type the wills and they execute it themselves. But the important thing is the execution has to be properly done. Otherwise, your will fail.
Okay, thank you, Darrell. And we did have a few more questions, but I will take those after the next presentation, okay? So Darrell will be on hand with us to respond to those as well. So no question will be missed. Our second presenter is Mrs. Chandra Nisbet Cancino, who is a registered nurse or midwife by profession. She currently holds the position of General Manager for Corporate Customer Services for Social Security Board. Chandra has worked with the board for the past 20 years in various capacities and have moved through the ranks, her area of expertise being employees' benefits. She is married to Mr. Armin Cancino. To present on the topic, retirement through social security lens, please welcome Mrs. Chandra Nisbet Cancino.
There we go. Okay, good morning, everybody. And thanks to SolutionsPlus and everybody who gave me the opportunity to be here today. Welcome to all the viewers. My topic this morning is a little bit different from the Honorable Bradley's in that I will speak a little bit more about being alive for the most part. And so we want to discuss a little bit about Social Security and the retirement pensions. Share. I am trying to change a slide here, but it's not. Let's try it this way. The slide is not sharing. The slide is not moving. Okay, there we go. So to start I'll take the opportunity to give you a little bit of information about Social Security. Social Security is really it's a tripartite, the Social Security Board has tripartite representation, which includes representatives from the business sector, includes representatives from the unions, or what we call them the social partners, and then the government appointees. So for Social Security, the social insurance is a social insurance program where benefits are indexed to what you pay. So we start with the registration process, if you can see it up on the slide. And that is for us the most important process because that initiates your insured, it initiates you as an insured person to the Social Security Board. And so currently we have about 100, probably a little bit more of 108,000 registered persons with the Social Security Board. So once you register with Social Security, you are then eligible to make contributions. And remember, contributions are made not only by you, but also by your employer once you are employed. As soon as you start making contributions to the Social Security Board, you then become eligible for our benefits. Social Security's benefits are divided into two parts. First, we have the short-term benefits and we have the long-term benefits. The short-term benefits include maternity, sickness, employment injury, and medical care. And the long-term benefits include disability, invalidity, retirement, death and funeral grant, and survivors. So today we're going to focus primarily on retirement. And so I will show you how your payment into Social Security translates to your pension. So as you are aware, because a lot of people see Social Security as a tax, and it is a tax in the sense that it is legislated, and so we are bound by law to contribute to the Social Security program once we are employed for more than 8 hours per week. So I am going to show you how that contribution translates into your retirement pension. Now remember, we provide both short-term and long-term pensions. But for the benefit of this presentation, we'll talk about the retirement pension. So in order for you to qualify for a retirement pension, you have to have a minimum of 500 contributions into Social Security, which is equivalent to approximately 10 years of contributions. So for example, in 1981, when Social Security started, no one was qualifying for a pension. And so the rate of pensions at that time, of course, was 0 to none. 10 years later, so the persons have been contributing to the system, into the program for 10 years, then started to qualify for their pensions. So, which is a low qualifying condition, because in most regions, qualifying conditions for a retirement pension is way more than 500. In some parts of the world, it's 750, and even in some parts of the Caribbean, it's as much as 1,000 contributions or 20 years of work. And so this slide here is particularly to show you for someone perhaps who is contributing for the minimum amount of time, which is 10 years, you would have paid out of your salary $4,959 into Social Security. And if you have received a pension for 1 year, you would have already collected back just about all that you contributed into Social Security. So it is extremely important. It is an extremely good investment, and your rate of return is very good once you reach retirement age. Now, for Belizeans, once you reach the age of 60, it is projected that men will live for an average of 19 years, and women will live for an average of 23 years. And so once you reach retirement age and you start to collect your Social Security retirement pension, you are surely to get back everything that you have put into the Social Security program. And so some persons will say, well, suppose I die before I reach retirement age. Well, perhaps you may have benefited from the short-term pensions for the sickness benefit or the maternity benefit. But this slide is to show you what it looks like to contribute for 10 years at the highest rate. So the total would be $13,312 because that includes the employer's contribution and your contribution. But from your pocket, it would be a total of $4,959. Now, if you're someone that contributes at the higher end, say you're someone that has worked 30 years, you know, in the public service system, we have a lot of persons that meet these requirements, that have worked many years. Even in Social Security, we have a lot of these persons. For your entire contribution period out of your salary, you would have contributed $10,247. And what you would get back if you collect for 1 year would be $9,152. That is at a rate of $176 per week. If you collect for 10 years, you would have collected $91,520. So it is well above what you contributed that you would have collected as a retirement pension. Now, if you look at this row here, this is the amount that you get and for retirement pensions at Social Security based on what you contribute. And this is important because Social Security retirement pensions were never meant to be a replacement of your salary. However, for most people in Belize, this is the only pension that they receive, and so are forced to, really live off their retirement pension. And so these are things that you need to consider as you go along in life. Perhaps if you can always come into Social Security offices and ask us, what your pension would look like based on what your salary is, and then you would be able to plan and decide if this is something that you will be able to live with. Recently, sorry, before I go to that, let me just share another slide here that shows what a retirement pensioner is. These are realistic examples. And so, for example, we have a person here who has worked 23.4 years, has been receiving a pension from Social Security for 13 years at a rate of $163.36 a week, contributed a total of $14,080, and has so far been receiving $110,430. He has been collecting for 13 years, and this person is still active. This person is alive, so he or she will continue to collect. So again, it is just showing you that what you are contributing to Social Security, you are certainly getting a high rate on your return. Some will argue that our rate of return is better than what you will get at most financial institutions. But this is just so that you can have an idea of what you put in versus what you get out for your retirement pension. This is another example for someone, receiving a retirement pension on the lower end, where this person contributed for 11 years, has been paid a pension for 2 years, and passed away. This person contributed total of $8,531 and got back in a retirement pension $8,528 at a rate of $82 per week. Now remember, these persons at the lower end pay an average of about 83 cents. Well, that has gone up recently with the contribution reform. So what they are getting relative to what they had contributed is essentially a lot more. I'll give one more example because we have, in the interest of time. Now this is a person, because remember, for Social Security, you can receive 2 pensions at the same time in some cases. In this particular case, this person was injured on the job 25 years ago. This person is still alive and has been receiving a weekly disablement pension of $49.35 every week. When you're receiving a disablement pension, you can still continue to work. And has retired worked for 35.2 years and has retired and has been receiving a pension for 1 year at the rate of $201.60. And so what this shows is that the person contributed $28,971 total over 35 years and has already received almost $70,000 in pensions. And so again, I go back to saying that while we don't necessarily want to pay a tax, this is one tax that your return on your investment is extremely beneficial. This is the last example I have, and this is retirement pension to survivors. Now we get into the area that Mr. Bradley was speaking, because this is a retirement pensioner who has died. And this person worked 28.6 years, received a pension for 5 years, and then died. And so for the period of his retirement, he collected $45,000 and he contributed $20,000. So again, even before he or she died, he collected double of what he or she contributed during all his years of work. Now, when that person dies, you have a wife or you have children that qualify, then your survivors continue to receive what we call a survivor's pension beyond your death. And so that's, even though you die, your pension does not necessarily die with you depending on your beneficiaries. And so in this particular case, he has a wife who has been collecting a survivor's pension for 12 years, and she has already collected $53,913. Now, really, it doesn't even matter if she was a contributor to Social Security. She has benefited from the death of her husband, who was a contributor, and then a child who received a pension for 7 years at the tune of $11,700. And so again, for Social Security survivors pension does provide a social safety net for those persons who survive. However, the amount is not huge. And so it's not something that perhaps, you know, you would be able to live comfortably on. So these are things that you need to know. For Social Security, have done recently is increased our contribution rate. Of course, that was not necessarily popular with the general public, but now it has caused the persons who have a higher salary to receive higher, because previously we only insured previously we only insured your salary up to $340, but now we are now extending that up to 500 and over. So as you can see here,
178.37.
as does your short-term benefits increase, so too does your pension. Up to last year, the most that a retired pensioner could receive is $192. As of January 4th, 2021, your maximum pension will now be $312. So that is more in alignment with what your salary is for those persons who make anywhere between $300 and $500. So that is another benefit of the contribution reform, because we did it not only for the benefit of the Social Security program, but it's also important to be able to better equate benefits with salaries. And so those are some of the changes that Social Security made that we found very important. Now, things that we would advise you to do would be to check your contribution history. You know, please ask, you're free to go in and ask at offices. Don't wait until the couple days before your retirement or even a year before. Ask what your payment will look like now. You know, you don't need to wait, so that if you're in the business of planning, and this forum is all about planning and not waiting. Plan for your golden years. Social Security is not an unemployment relief program. So you need to plan for those events accordingly. If you're not employed and you're not retired, then you need to properly mitigate for those situations. But as far as the retirement benefit is concerned, it has now, your retirement payment has now been increased for persons who make from $300 to $500 under the contribution reform system. And you now have the opportunity to collect or to have your payments equate a little bit more to what your salary is. And so if you have any questions besides here, I'm just putting up the slide here so that if somebody looks at it later and they want to access Social Security, they can be able to see this slide and use our communication channels to ask any other questions, perhaps that might not be related to this one. So I will stop now and see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Nisbet Cancino.
Sorry for that rough start, but my slide got stuck and it wasn't moving.
Okay. Your vast experience and wisdom has certainly benefited our audience. I'll now look at the chat column to see if we have any questions for you. Okay, the first question is, if you already made more than 500 contributions, what is the benefit to continue making contributions apart from your sickness and injury at the workplace? And then it has a second part. Does it increase the amount of pension you'll receive?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The Social Security pension calculation is in the chapter 44 of the laws of Belize. If you want to go and really look at the details, it's a little bit complicated for me to explain it here, but in short, what it means is that for every set of 50 contributions that you make beyond the minimum requirement, which is 500, you get an additional % added to your pension payment. So the more contributions you have, the higher your pension will be. Because for every group of 50 contributions, it is going to be an increase in the total number of the calculation for your retirement pension. So the answer to that is yes.
Okay, the next question, when you register at Social Security and contributions begin, are you automatically entered into the pension plan, or do you have to register for pension benefits?
From the moment you contribute your first contribution to Social Security, you are, your pension contributions start to accrue. So if you're somebody, perhaps you're somebody who does not work consistently, maybe you are a cane farmer, and you work seasonal, etc. For the purpose of a pension, you don't need to have consecutive contributions because that is one of the requirements for the short-term benefits. For your pension, all your total contributions are taken into consideration at the time when your pension is being calculated. So any little job that you get, it is important to ensure that your employer is paying contributions on your behalf, because every single contribution that you make is added to your pension calculation. And it doesn't matter how many short-term benefit claims you have made throughout your working career. For example, if I've been sick every year, let's say I work 30 years and I've been sick every 5 years, so I get maybe a couple weeks off or sick leave, that has no impact whatsoever on the pension calculation. Your contributions are all accounted for when your pension is calculated.
Okay, the last one for you, Chandra. If a wife died, will the husband receive any benefit? Well, she says any contribution, I guess, a benefit.
Okay, now this is a topic that we've been discussing through the contribution reform process. And it's a little bit one-sided, prejudiced, if you want to use that word, for the woman, for the female, because if a man dies, a woman automatically receives a survivor's pension. If a woman dies, the husband has to prove that he was financially dependent on her to receive the survivor's pension for the male. So for a woman, it is automatic, but for a man at this time, it is not. So it's a topic that's being discussed because it is in favor of the females at this point. So the short answer is, for the man, it is not automatic. He has to prove that he was financially dependent on the female to be able to qualify for survivor's pension.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering the questions. And if there are any more questions later, I know you will be on hand to answer those.
Yes.
Help me introduce and welcome our next presenter, Mrs. Tessa Usher, who is a senior insurance advisor with Sagicor Life Inc. in Belize. She has been in the insurance industry for the past 16 years and has done extensive training in insurance and financial planning and management. Mrs. Usher is currently an active member of the Rotary Club of Belize and a past president. Tessa has just been appointed unit manager with Sagicor Life Inc. Belize branch, effective July 1st, 2020. She holds an MBA from the University of the West Indies and a BA from the University of Belize. She is presently a certified financial services specialist and a life underwriter training council fellow. both designations which were acquired from the American College in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania through the Caribbean Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Tessa is married to Louis Usher for 30 years, and that union produced 4 beautiful children, 2 girls and 2 boys. It is my pleasure to welcome founder of SolutionsPlus and senior insurance advisor with Sagicor Life Inc., Mrs. Tessa Usher.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, our financial planning webinar. My topic today is planning with an advisor. I want to start off by saying, what is financial planning and why do we need to plan? Financial planning is not about you. It's about your family and your family's future generations. When you do financial planning right, your future generations can leverage on you to achieve their goals. Everything we do has to do with money. Buying a car, you need money. Buying a house, getting married, the birth of a new baby, death of a loved one, sickness or disability needs lots of money. So coming up with the right strategies can help you achieve your financial plan and help you to achieve your financial goals. I've come up with some basic habits to help you to save more. Identifying your basic necessities so you know how much to save. You need to automate your savings. And we always say you need to pay yourself first. Those monies that you pay yourself first are for your savings when you receive your salary. Monitor your spending habits and start creating savings goals. We don't want to be caught in a situation again like we have been caught with COVID, where the savings weren't there and we had to be scrambling about and around to find where finances would be coming from. We need to be determined. We all know that it takes time for behavior to become habits. The question is, are we determined to build a good savings habit? Remember, when you change your habits, you are on your way to changing your life too. So cultivating good savings habit now is important so that you can gain the rewards of having shorter term mortgages, more savings for your children's education, and ensuring that you retire comfortably. And as the old saying remains, it is not how much you earn, but it is how much you are able to save that determines your true wealth. There are 3 benefits of financial planning, and it helps you to create peace of mind. You rest easy when you have a plan, a structured plan in place. Financial independence. You're able to meet your expenses for the rest of your life. And early retirement. Who said that you cannot retire early? You set the stage, or you set the goal, or you set the age of when you want to retire. There are 5 stages of the financial planning that I came up with. The first is that you need to be aware that you need help, self-awareness. Then you need to identify with the goals and the objectives that you want to achieve in your lifetime. You need to have a strategy. How am I going to achieve those goals? It's similar to planning a party. Do we go head on and plan a party without having a list of items or a list of instructions that we need to take care of? We need to make sure we have the venue. We need to make sure we have the decorator. We need to make sure we have the menu. We need to make sure we have a list of invitees. And so there's a structured way how we go about planning a party. Why can't we structure the way how we need to plan our lives from birth until retirement or until death? And we need to understand the importance of having an insurance plan. Understand insurance. After having done all this, we can't just leave our plan there. We have to revisit that plan time and time again. Revisit that plan in 3 months. Revisit it in 6 months. You may not make any changes, but you can revisit that plan often to ensure that the plan that you put in place is on its way to how you want it to work. Why is insurance a smart financial strategy? Well, you die, we pay. You fall sick, we pay. You retire, we pay. Your kids go to university or your children's education, we pay. These are four financial fears that many will experience at some point in their lives. Sagicor Life has the products that will give you the coverage during your time of need. Insurance, I want to reiterate that insurance is the transfer of risk. The risk to you without insurance is 100%. When you transfer that risk and you make a payment every month, which is a fraction of that lump sum that you would need, that's where you can have the financial independence, the peace of mind, and everything else that I have spoken about previously. There's a rule of thumb in insurance. Similarly, how we have a rule of thumb in drinking water, we have a rule of thumb in insurance. We need to drink 8 glasses of water, minimum, it is said, for our kidneys to be healthy. So the rule of thumb in insurance is we need to have 10 times our annual income or salary for a life coverage for our families, to protect our families. 20% of your income should go towards planning for your retirement. 20%. And I know that Miss Cancino had alluded to the social security benefits, that the social security benefits were not placed there as a pension plan. They're there to supplement or complement what you supposedly should have in place or put in place for your retirement. 5%, 5 times your annual income should go towards protecting your income. Sometimes we are of the opinion that our income is always going to be there. And then an emergency, we are faced with an emergency, and we later realize that that income either is dwindled down or that income disappears or is no longer there. And we can look at the most recent example of this pandemic, that many persons' income has dwindled down. Many persons have no income, and many persons' income has been cut due to the fact that the the the, the economy has taken a little dive to a certain extent. 5% of your income should go towards your children's education. So we can all do the maths there, right? The benefits of having a life insurance plan: life insurance provides support for your dependents. They depend on your income as you being the breadwinner. It preserves your estate. Number 3, life insurance protects your wealth from potential creditors. Insurance proceeds are exempted from seizures by creditors. The taxman, nobody cannot come and seize your life insurance proceeds because it is exempted. The death benefit is not taxable, and life insurance can be used to protect your mortgage upon the death of the insured. Many times in certain instances, you would find that if the financial institution does not require you to have life insurance protecting that mortgage, and the death occurs of that insured person who has that mortgage, that mortgage is left for those the mortgage is left behind unpaid and still needs to be paid. That loan is not dead if that mortgage is not protected by life insurance. So for those persons listening, I would want you to ensure that and for those who have a mortgage, ensure that your financial institution has a life insurance protection over that mortgage. Because if you have been paying for 10, 15 years and you close your eyes or you forget to wake up in the morning, rest assured, if you have that mortgage protected, your loved ones would have nothing to worry about. But if that mortgage is not protected and your loved ones cannot continue to finance that mortgage, there where the problem lies. Retirement plan. Sorry. How does it work? Well, I have created some steps. It is the financial goal of retirement is to ensure that you receive a consistent flow of income when you retire. It is known as the longest holiday. And I cannot overemphasize that. The steps for the retirement plan is the first thing you need to do is you need to make a decision to purchase a plan. Thereafter, the second step is you need to make a monthly payment to the insurance company for that retirement plan. And the third step is you decide when you want to receive your monthly payout, not Tessa, not no other advisor, not Sagicor, but you decide when you want to receive that payout. Health insurance, how does it work? We climb that same ladder or that same step. You decide to purchase a health plan while you're healthy. While you're healthy, and I have to overemphasize that because I could recall receiving numerous calls from persons who want to purchase a health insurance plan. And I could remember one person specifically state, I don't care what it's going to cost me, I will pay for that plan. But unfortunately, that person had a pre-existing condition. And I said, I'm so sorry. We are not able, we are not able to offer you the plan because you have a pre-existing condition. And oftentimes in my career, I find that it is when someone is ill or someone gets sick, that is when they seek out insurance. Insurance is bought when you're healthy, so that when you become ill, the company is there to protect you. The second step is you pay the insurance on a company on a monthly basis. And the third step, when there is an emergency or health crisis, we pay 80% of that bill after the deductible. Critical illness, how does it work? There are 4 basic steps. The first step is you purchase a critical illness plan. The second, you make regular premium payments. You pay the insurance company monthly. The third step is if you are diagnosed with any of the 21 illnesses covered, we pay a lump sum benefit to you to take care of that illness. And maybe you would ask, why would I need to purchase a critical illness plan versus a health plan, or a health plan versus a critical illness plan, or both? Both complement each other. A critical illness plan gives you lump sum, it gives you cash flow. So in the event that you need to travel and you need to take a loved one with you, you would have extra cash flow that from that critical illness plan. Also, when you're critically ill, I'm not certain how long you're going to be keeping going to be employed. And so you would need to have cash flow to be able to meet your commitments on a monthly basis. And the fourth and final step is these monies can be used to pay for medical attention, pay your bills, pay to have someone travel with you, like I mentioned before. Revisiting your financial plan, when should you do that? When your income changes, when your life changes, for example, a marriage, having more children, or having a child, graduation, change of job, or a promotion. And I have come up with some tips to help you live financially free. And I hope that these tips would be taken into serious consideration. You need to ensure you're saving monies into an annuity. An annuity is a pension, which provides you with income when you retire. Inflation is real, Be cautious of how much money you keep in your savings or your checking account. If you invest in the stock market, watch it with caution and be ready to take action. Ensure you have a will to protect the people that you truly care about. And I cannot overemphasize that more because Honorable Darrell, he brought about very, very valid information as it relates to having a will. Life insurance, I want you to know that it is not an investment. It is a risk management tool to protect your future income and the future of your family. Your future plan should be clear, very clear, especially in the areas of your career, your life goals, your expenses, and your investment strategy. Build an emergency fund, which should cover approximately 12 months of your expenses. And I used to say 3 to 6 months, and I have since revisited that. And that is why I have here 12 months, because COVID has allowed us to make new assessments. And that is why I came up with 12 months, because I know that the 6-month mark, we are almost at the 6-month mark for COVID, and it's still ongoing. Your health is your wealth. Ensure that you keep a close eye on both. Old age is real. Do not overestimate your working capacity. You will need some form of guaranteed income when you are in retirement. Age has a funny way of taking a toll on your ability to work. Always remember, retirement is your longest vacation. Life has no guarantees. Plan today. Sickness and death won't wait until you have your finances in order. It will come, and when it does, be prepared. Oftentimes, I would hear my clients say, or my prospective clients say, I need to wait until I clear this bill, and I need to wait until I clear this loan, or I need to wait until I come back from vacation. I am sorry. Unfortunately, life doesn't deal us that set of cards. Emergencies will come when we least expect it. How prepared are you? Do you think insurance planning is not in your budget? Don't wait until you or your loved one is ill, disabled, or can die. That's when we have the most costly experience. And I thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. I think you took away a lot of the uncertainties that many of us have about insurance. We usually have a mental block when we think about money and planning, but you kind of broke it down for us. So thank you. Let us now go to the chat column and see if there are any questions for you. Okay, we have a question for you, Tessa. What is the minimum payments we can do for a health insurance?
The minimum payment for the health insurance is dependent on your age. And I cannot overemphasize, Charmaine, how how important it is to look at your budget, and you look at your disposable income to see what it is you can afford to start a plan with. The plans are tailor-made. The plans are not a one-size-fits-all.
Okay. Another question, Tessa.
Yes.
What medical examinations must one do to qualify for health insurance?
Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. Each person is assessed separately and differently, and it is until we fill out an application with that individual, then based on the health questions that are asked, then the company decides, the underwriters decide based on the health questions what it is or you need to do. So it's not something that I can say yes, you need to do this from day one, or you can do this, you need to do this upfront, because that's not how it works. An application is filled out, it gets assessed by the underwriters who are the experts in their field. They make, based on your questions that you would have answered on that application form, determines what medicals needed, if any, that needs to be done. Not all applications require a medical.
Okay. This comment and a question, it says, excellent presentation, Tessa. You mentioned an annuity slash pension fund. What do you suggest for someone who works on contract with no access to a company's pension system?
And there's a lot of persons that does not have access to a pension plan. I alluded to that in one of my talk show presentations, that most companies in Belize, if it's not for the utility companies and a few others, offer a pension plan to its employees. So it is in each person's interest to seek out an advisor to be able to assist them in putting in place a plan that suits their budget. That advisor is going to go through something similar like an income and expense assessment with them, and look at their disposable income and see if there is any room. When we come to you, it's not it's not how it should be, but because I did say that you should be saving 20% of your income in a retirement savings, but it doesn't happen like that, because most often times we find that persons would spend everything first, and if any is left, then we would use what is left. That is that is why we are, many of us are in the way we are today, and that is why we are COVID caught us by surprise, because we do the after. We react. We are not proactive. We need to be proactive in terms of, and especially as self-employed, I empathize even more with somebody who is self-employed, because I say, you of all persons need to ensure that you have a pension plan in place. You have some kind of plan in place for when you retire, right? So, and I would suggest that persons who are on contractors, so it all depends, Dr. Sanders, because I would recommend paying a half yearly premium or a yearly premium up front, so you don't get caught in that monthly thing where for you it feels like a bill or an expense, because it's not an expense. It's not an expense.
Okay, another comment and a question says, wow, learned so much. Up to what age can a person buy an insurance, and what types?
We have different types of insurances, and honestly, it's what, after we have done an assessment with you, it is what you want to look at. We make the recommendations based on what it is you want, not what we want to give to you. So the plans that we offer is not something that I would say we would offer across the board. No, it all depends on what it is you want to plan for. If it is education, if it is retirement, if it is protecting your mortgage, protecting your income, protecting your health, it all depends on what it is that you want to plan for, and we design a plan and recommend the best possible plan that is suitable to the budget that you have to put towards it.
Okay. What if an insured person dies within a year of payment of insurance? Is the amount claim remains the same?
Good
Sure.
question. Good
Okay.
question. Yes, but from day one, when you sign up for an insurance plan, whichever it is, once that plan has been approved, and it takes, depending on if you have to do a medical or not, once the plan has been approved, the very second or the very minute, the very hour, day, week, month thereafter, you are covered 100%. And that is why I say, when you put that $100 into Sagicors, and I'm only using $100 for reference, when you put that $100 in Sagicors' hand, that $100 can immediately create for your family, your loved ones, 100,000. And should you die right after that plan has been approved, that is the contractual arrangement agreement that we have with our clients. We have to pay. It is a legal binding document that we present to our clients when we agree to take that $100 and approve that plan.
Okay, this one is a little bit lengthy, but I'll still read it. As you jump 35 years of age as a male, there are certain health problems that naturally comes along, especially hereditary ones. If you are healthy but have a hereditary problem like pressure or diabetes, would be safe to say that you can or you should do a term insurance versus a life insurance? And then that's a question. And then he says cost effective. I'll let you do that before I say the rest because you'll forget.
Yes. So he's asking if he should do a term insurance versus a life insurance.
Like based on his health and hereditary problems.
Does he have the illness or pre-existing condition, or it's just hereditary?
Just hereditary.
Just hereditary.
Says hereditary health problems.
All applications are assessed based on, yes, your individual health and your family's history, but it doesn't stop you from getting insurance. You probably would just get rated a little bit more because you are at a higher risk, right? So
okay.
it can be either the term insurance or it could be either the life insurance, because he or she wouldn't have had a pre-existing condition. It's just a hereditary condition, right?
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I'll just finish up this last part and then we move on. He says, if you are a person that travels a lot in such lines for work, to ensure if you die in an accident, your family is covered.
Here you go.
Can you cut the mic for Wilbert, Miss Rhonda? Go ahead, Tessa. He's asking if he travels a lot because of the work and he has an accident, if the family would be covered.
If he's covered, it all depends on which type of insurance. Because if he is covered for accidental and he were in an accident and he died or he lost any limbs or he become paralyzed, yes, we have to pay out if he's covered for accidental. So it all depends on the stipulations in the contract, right? It's what he signed up for.
Okay, so we do have a few more questions for you, Tessa, but your time is up and we will field those questions at the end of the session. Thank you for your time. And I now ask you to kindly do us the honor of introducing our final presenter for the morning.
Dr. Christopher Malcolm, who is our keynote speaker today, is an attorney at law who has been admitted to practice in Jamaica, the British Virgin Islands, St. Lucia, Dominica, and Belize. He is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and also a fellow and council member of the Asian Institute of Alternative Dispute Resolution. Dr. Malcolm is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Law, the University of the West Indies, Mona Campus, Secretary General of the Jamaica International Arbitration Center Limited, and former Attorney General for the British Virgin Islands. He's going to be presenting today on managing and mitigating your financial risk. Please welcome Dr. Christopher Malcolm.
Hello, good morning, and thank you very much to SolutionsPlus Limited and Tessa Usher in particular for having invited me to make this presentation. To the other presenters and all the organizers, I also thank you for being involved in this very, very productive session, and one which I'm sure we will all benefit from. I certainly have learned a lot sitting in on it, and I trust that others who are sitting in on the outside have also been learning a lot. Now, as keynoter, whatever that means, it has been a little interesting trying to get this concept of managing and mitigating financial risk in with the very excellent presentations that they have done, and to see how well we gel together on it. But something that struck to me, I must admit, at the end of, or towards the end of her presentation, Mrs. Nesbitt Cansinio indicated that in Belize, under the laws of Belize, there's in fact a survivor's pension benefit arrangement, whereas a female automatically receives a survivor's benefit upon the death of her husband. The husband is discriminated against and will not receive any such benefit unless he's able to provide evidence that he has been taken care of by her throughout the life of the marriage. Now, what that immediately does, of course, is that it raises for us the fact that inherent in that is a financial risk that must be managed and mitigated by any husband, recognizing that even though you may be in a situation where you have planned your arrangements as a couple, you could find that notwithstanding the best planning in that regard, at the end of marriage brought about by the death of your spouse, your wife, you could then end up recognizing that benefits that you should ordinarily be able to receive in a society where there's non-discrimination do not in fact arise. And that is something which has to be properly planned for and managed, I would suppose. Not that I'm asking anybody to go and make up stories as to being cared for, but one of the management tools I would expect is that men would now start advocating a lot more. And in this regard, I know that the Honorable Darrell Bradley is online, and I'm sure he's doing whatever he can as a husband himself to ensure that other husbands like himself are not unduly prejudiced against under the laws of Belize, since he is himself a lawmaker. But getting back though to managing and mitigating your financial risk, when we consider this topic, I think the good starting point is to try to understand the nature of financial services, which ties into financial risk, what they offer, and what it is that the inherent risks are, and how it is that you may protect yourself by reference to the sector as it works. Now, in a very general and traditional way, we tend to look at the financial services sector in three broad categories. We look at it in terms of banking, securities, and in terms of insurance. Now, banking is traditionally considered to be a store of wealth. That is where you make your savings. You get savings and you put them in a bank for saving. Traditionally as well, we see the securities sector as that place where you go to buy your stocks and your shares and so on. And that is traditionally intended to be for purposes of wealth accumulation. And in a traditional sense, insurance is meant really to hedge and to protect your wealth, not by reference to savings, but by reference to safeguarding it with appropriate policies of insurance that will give you adequate health or other protection as and when you require it. Now, in that context, of course, we bear in mind that in a current arrangement and in the new economies as we have them, you have a conflation, and so you don't have that strict line of demarcation between banking, insurance, and securities as we previously had. So you now have what are effectively concurrent type of activities, where in the insurance sector, for example, you would have heard Tessa speaking earlier about some of the policies that are available. And some of those are typically in the nature of savings type policies, which are taking you in the realm of banking. And others are in the nature of investment for accumulation of wealth, which would of course be taking you in what would traditionally be considered in the nature of securities. So what it is that understanding that basic concept and understanding that you need to protect yourself, the important thing to do firstly is to try to ensure that in your planning, you clearly understand how the sector works, you clearly understand what products and services are available, and then ensure that you have an appropriate mix and matching of available options to give yourself the best possible way of managing the risks that are there. Now, in this, of course, the traditional approach, of course, if you're talking about securities and so on, people talk about ensuring that you have things which are in the nature of fixed return investments, others which are much more flexible and much more speculative by nature. And of course, the typical thing to do if you're in the business of accumulation is to ensure that you find an appropriate match to treat with your own financial circumstances, one, the resources that you have available to you, two, and what is available in the market, three, to allow you to meet your needs. Now, insofar as risks are concerned, of course, getting beyond that understanding, there is a very basic understanding that whatever you're considering risks and management of risk, there are three critical words that you must bear in mind. And in my own concept, I talk about what I call the I am of contracting and the I am of life, really. And the I am is really understanding that in the business of risk and managing it, you need to firstly be able to identify the risks that exist. You secondly need to understand how best to allocate those risks. And the third thing you need to be able to do, which is the M, is to understand how best to manage or mitigate those risks. Now, in the context of our general day-to-day life, and the COVID experience would have brought that clearly home to us. One risk that we sometimes do not think about as a lot if we hold what is considered to be tenured or fixed employment is the idea that employment itself is risky business. You could be employed today and find yourself unemployed tomorrow. So the question is, how do you ensure that wherever you are at the stage of your employment, if you're employed, you ensure that you have alternatives that are available to you in the event that you should lose your employment. So if we're talking about managing and mitigation of risks, then a risk that is critical to employment is ensuring that at all material times, you're creating viable alternatives to the employment you have. Another risk, of course, that we sometimes do not think about often is the political risk. And that is a risk, again, in terms of managing, how does it relate to you in a personal and financial sense? Depending on the government you have, that could determine what the circumstances are that you have available to you. So another aspect of managing appropriately your financial and other risks is ensuring that you have clear enough participation in the political process to ensure that you secure the best government possible that will give you the best chance of having a viable economy in which you can benefit. Another critical risk, of course, related to that and others, is a risk which I am a little more comfortable with, and that's the risk of legal risks. How do I ring fence my assets? How do I ring fence my consulting that I do? How do I ring fence my employment? And the way to do that is to ensure that you get at all times the best possible legal or other advice that will help you to put the best possible contractual arrangements in place to protect you. Because at the core of risk and management of risk is this tool of commerce that we call the contract. And the terms of your contract will oftentimes determine the benefits you get under any arrangement that you enter into. And of course, we can't be speaking finance without thinking of banking related or cross-border risk. And in this context, one of the things we have to do is think and understand the nature of money itself, which in our situation really is a fiat type arrangement, where since a long time ago, for example, the US dollar since the 1970s has not been backed by any gold or other reserves. And it is really on the basis of confidence that it gets its value. Now, in that context, we run the real risk that we have pegged exchange rates of interest and so on, that you could overnight find out what you think is lots of money in the bank could overnight suffer from the risk of money being lost due to devaluations or other things. So again, you have to understand money and how you can manage your risks, including by reference to investments and so on, with a view to giving you some level of protection in the event of depreciation in the value of your money held in the bank or elsewhere. And of course, related to that and banking is the idea of risks related to cross-border risk, and Belize would know it very well. What has happened with your correspondent banks and losing that? Because if you lose those correspondent banks, you could find, for example, that you have gone out and you have spread your risk by investment, for example, in foreign lands and in so on, and you may have had other persons, for example, even going into Belize to invest, and find that you have difficulties going through the banking system related to correspondent banking relationships. And that way you find that you are not able to access your resources when you need them. So again, you have to think of putting effective measures in place that will allow you to get around some of those difficulties if and when they arise. And in all of this, I suppose what I'm trying to say, if I haven't quite said it, is that there are multiplicity of risks. And it would be difficult for me or anybody to tell you that here are the 20, 30, or 40 risks that you must be concerned about. It really is based on individual assessment, having regard to the nature of the economy in which you live, having regard to your personal circumstances, but at all times understanding that you must, on an ongoing basis, sit down to determine what are the things that I have no control over, one, which then by extension creates some level of risks which are exogenous to you or external to you. The next thing is, what are those things that I have control over, but which may nevertheless be risk? And those things you try to then see what mitigating or other steps you can put in place. And my suggestion is that from a legal perspective, the best way you can preserve and protect your risk is by reference to the underlying contractual or other relations you get. So I'm also suggesting that as you think of speaking to your insurance persons, as you think of speaking to your bankers and other financial services providers, as you think of speaking to your accountant, as you think of speaking to anybody else, you also think realistically of speaking to your lawyers. So for example, if you're taking out an insurance policy, it is worth the while, particularly if there are significant sums of money involved, to go out and get some legal advice as to what the terms of the policy are, how those terms are likely to be interpreted if they were to go to court, and put yourself in a position where you have a best possible opportunity to know what the risk is that you're undertaking. There's nothing inherently wrong with taking risk. Risk comes with benefit, but what is inherently bad is not understanding the risks that are available to be assessed, not doing a proper assessment of them, and jumping headlong without understanding that you're jumping into a pool without water, which means you're certainly going to break your neck and die. You need to at the very least look to see whether or not there's water and consider the depth of that water before you decide to take a dive into a pool. And it's the same thing happening here. Once you're thinking of managing and mitigating your financial risk, you need to understand the lay of the land. You need to understand what is around and what then you can do. Now, bringing it back home to the individual, what then is to be done? And the truth is that it's heavy, and most of us in our daily lives do not understand half the things that come to us, much less things which are complicated. Most of us. I myself would say, well, I have a little understanding of law because it's my core discipline, but there are many other areas that I have little or no understanding about. And I think the important thing to do in these circumstances is to at all times understand that there are some things that we know and others that we don't. And the best approach as you mitigate and manage your risk is then to try to get out and keep yourself in a position where you can have best available talent and you can have persons who can give you guidance and support. Now, as I close, I wish to again thank the organizers for this, not just because they've invited me to put on a jacket at a time of COVID when I have been dressing on linen shorts and t-shirts, but because I think it is such an important initiative that has been developed. It is one where, unfortunately, I find in many of our societies, we do not pay enough attention to understanding financial risks and what we are getting involved in. We do not have sufficient financial education being taught. And we also do not have sufficient legal education being taught. And it is in that context that I'm particularly happy for having been here and being able to contribute as I have, because I think this hopefully has started an initiative which will grow bigger and become even more ingrained in Belizean society, where through Tessa and what she's doing, she can get more and more people tuned in to the need for effective financial advice. And hopefully as well, we will get the government and other authorities even being more supportive of what she's doing in the best interest of the economy and in the best interest of the people we set out to serve. Again, I thank you for the time. I thank you for the effort, and I certainly endorse it in the best way I can. Do have a wonderful rest of the day. And of course, I'm always available to answer any questions, provided they are within my purview. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Malcolm, and thank you for a very impressive presentation. Let me go to the chat to see if there are any questions for you.
No.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Let me check if there's any questions on our live YouTube and Facebook. 1 second. Okay. Well, I guess it was crystal clear, or questions will come in at the end when there's none on YouTube either. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the floor for any questions that you may have in the chat. Please let us know what questions you have, and please identify the panelists, the specific panelists that you would like to address your question or respond to your question. And if you want any specific questions answered later, just send us in the chat, you can send us your name and email, and we will get back to you as well. I do have, and I'd like to ask our presenters if they can turn on their video and mics, because I do have some questions that spilled over. So the first question, and this question was on YouTube, and it's actually for Tessa. Okay, it says, if I am already covered under a work group health and life insurance plan, should I consider additional insurance coverage if I drive often on highways for work, or I'm exposed to additional risk? That question is for you, Tessa.
They're covered at work already.
Yes, it says they're covered at work, but they have a type of job that says I'm already covered under a work group health and life insurance plan.
Let me address the group coverage. I want to emphasize that the group coverage is you only have that coverage while you are employed with that company or organization. The minute you leave the company or the organization, before I go to that, you're fully covered once you have coverage with your company or organization. Yes, whether you're on the road, off the road, you're covered for health, you're covered for life. However, I want to add that you only have access to that plan while you are a part of the group. You do not own the group. So the company owns that group. So when you leave that employee, you have no type of coverage whatsoever. Also, be reminded that the coverage that the company gives you in reference to life insurance is only a small benefit that would by no means be able to take care of your families if you want to replace your income. You want to replace your income upon death. So that is why it is good to we take into consideration when we do the assessment, we do take into consideration, yes, that you have the coverage. However, we have to advise you that that coverage is only there while you're in their employ. Yes.
Okay. This question is for our lawyers on the panel. It says, are registered companies in Belize by law offer are they expected to offer pension to their employees? Darrell, would you take this one?
Okay, good. So there's no legal requirement for any company in Belize to offer pension. But pensions are regulated. So recently, I think it was 2017 or 2018, the government passed the Private Pensions Act. So you would see that in Belize, larger companies like BEL and BTL offer contractually based contributory pension schemes. You also have statutory bodies like the Social Security and like Central Bank and the Belize Tourism Board who would offer pension schemes for their employees, but that is a benefit that's related to your employment, and there's no legal requirement for any company to offer a pension. The only legally required mandated pension in Belize is, as Chandra mentioned, the Social Security regime.
Okay, thanks. It says, if I am insured and use the insurance, does the cost increases thereafter?
It depends on the type of insurance. The health insurance, if it is an individual plan, that plan is the rates are locked in for every 10 years. So every 10 years the rate changes for a health plan. But when you have a life insurance plan or any other type of savings or investment plans with us, those rates don't change. Those rates remain fixed.
Okay. It says, how does the life insurance work? Just a little explanation. That was a question and a statement.
Okay. Life insurance, like I said before, it's a transfer of risk. So we assess that person's risk to their family. In the event that the individual dies, we want to know what is the loss of income on that family. So that is the level that we assess it to. Once we have determined the amount of loss to that family, then we are able to say, okay, based on what the family needs upon death, I provide a quote based on the amount, and the amount goes in line with your age. So while that is why it is good for younger persons to take out life insurance, even if it's not a whole lot, but to start off because they benefit the most in terms of the rate. The rate is very cost effective for a young person versus someone who is older.
Okay, this question is for Chandra. Are the benefits taxable? Say a survivor is employed and still collecting benefits. Chandra?
The question is if the Social Security benefit is taxable?
Yes, and the specific example is if a survivor is employed and still collecting benefits, is that taxable?
No, the Social Security benefit calculations are based strictly on the contribution of the deceased if the person is a survivor, and those are calculated based on the law and are not taxable.
Okay, we have several comments, and this one in particular says, thanks for the webinar. Sorry I missed Honorable Bradley's presentation, excellent presentations. And I want to address concerns about the presentations. If you missed them, and even if you didn't, but you'd like a copy, please note that we will be sending those via email, the email that you used when you registered for the conference. Those will be sent as early as tomorrow. We'll give the presenters some time to make any necessary adjustments, and we'll send them out. See if I have any other question. There's a comment for Tessa. Excellent presentation, Tessa. I really learned a lot. We'll be talking with you. So very proud to have women like you and Dr. Saunders and Chandra as leaders in your respective fields. Thanks for organizing this webinar and for inviting me. And then we have another comment. Excellent presentation, Tessa. Don't see any other question. I think I covered, let me see if there's any questions from online. That's it. So, okay, none on YouTube. All right. Oh, I saw 2 messages now. Let's see what those are. Okay. No other questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you found today informative and that you feel more confident about planning your future. As we close, we'd like to thank the following persons, and these are in no specific order. Dr. Christopher Malcolm, our keynote speaker, Honorable Darrell Bradley for his detailed address about estate planning, Mrs. Chandra Nisbet Cancino for valuable information about Social Security benefits, Mrs. Marlene Chin, she is the AVP for marketing with Sagicor, and her team for their invaluable help in putting together the webinar. Channel 5, Open Your Eyes for granting us airtime to promote the webinar. Belize Chamber of Commerce for their assistance in marketing the webinar. Mr. Delvin Medina for putting together the amazing flyers for the webinar. Mr. Everett Petillo for technical assistance. Mr. Dwight Gabb for technical assistance. Mr. Peter Quayle for his technical assistance. And finally, Ms. Rhonda Crichton for Morning Matters for hosting the webinar today on this Zoom link. Thank you all.
And to you, Dr. Sanders, for being such a gracious host for us today.
Thank you, Chandra. And again, if you have any questions before you sign off, we ask that you include your name and your email, and we will definitely respond to those. Thank you all for your time. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. I learned a lot from the Honorable Bradley's presentation as well.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks to everyone. I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Charmaine Sanders for assisting me in hosting the webinar. She has been a great help to me and encourager, motivator. And I couldn't have done it without her or Miss Marlene Chin or AVP from Sagicor, our marketing AVP. Thank you guys. Thank you to all the speakers, the audience, and everyone. I am truly delighted to have done this webinar. It's going to be the first of many of my webinars. Thank you, thank you, thank you.